Rachel.
And I'm Hannah.
Welcome to the RAD Report, a podcast born out of the nonprofit Ride at Dawn.
In the coming episodes, you will hear real-life truths from victims and professionals who have incredible stories of overcoming abuse, finding healing, and building a better industry for our kids in it.
These stories will not be easy to hear. They are even harder to live through. Please use discretion and your own judgment on if you are in a place to listen and absorb these stories.
Our goal for this podcast is to give our guests the stand and a chance to tell their story the way that they want to, uninterrupted and unscripted.
Glad you're here. Please let us know what you think of this episode and comment the questions you want us to ask our guest on the follow-up episode.
Enjoy.
I'm a foster mom. I became a foster parent with my wife, and we were placed with 2 kiddos last November. Like the week of Thanksgiving, they were like, babies, here you go, babies. So we have 2 toddlers, and I was doing insurance and decided I hated it. And so our caseworker encouraged me to look at DHS. And I kind of laughed at her when she said it. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. Like, we're foster parents, but we're foster parents through the tribe because we don't want to be through DHS. And so the stigma was already there for me. Like I had heard all of the negative about DHS. I believed in it. I bought into it. But the way she talked about it, I was like, okay, might as well apply. It'll get me out of here at least. So I went in for the interview, and while talking to the supervisor that was interviewing me, she was telling me of her cases and what she did into insurance because I wanted to help people whenever disaster struck. And she told me that we meet people on their worst days and we're able to provide them resources and get them back on their feet to be better than they were yesterday, to fix the mistakes that they had made. And her saying that stuck with me. And so they called me about a week later and I immediately started. So I've been doing this since February of this year. And I honestly don't know that I will ever do anything but social services now. Yeah, we do. We meet people on their worst days and we're able to provide resources that can not only change their circumstances, but change their lives. I'm a regional worker, so I do this whole Northwest region from the Panhandle over to Washington County, so Bartlesville, down to about Stevens County. So we're the largest region up here. So I do the largest region in our state. So 1 week I am in the field and I meet with families. I do interviews. I talk to kiddos and parents. And then the next week I'm in the office. So not every worker is like that. County workers, it's a mix. They might be in the office for an hour and out in the field for an hour. But as a regional worker, I have a different setup. So it's hard to give that perspective for what a normal county worker gets to do versus what I do. But a normal week in the field, I do about 5 cases a week. Each case is so different. Sometimes I have 1 kid and sometimes I have 10. Sometimes it's just one family on a case and sometimes it's multiple. And it all just depends on what your family looks like. We are all so blended and different that one case that is a dirty home for one family could be nothing. And for another family, it ends in a removal of children.
Let's dive down that really quick.
Okay.
Walk me through there.
Okay. Which part? The removal of kids or just how they're different?
Well, I think the difference there.
Okay.
Yeah, talked about, guess how it can be seen different.
So to a lot of people, a dirty home is you haven't mopped your floors in about a week. You may have some clothes on the floor. To DHS, it's a totally different thing. It's not even roaches. 9 times out of 10, we see roaches in houses whenever we're going into a dirty home. And we walk out going, it wasn't that bad. You get a totally different perspective on what a dirty home is. And that's what I have to tell my spouse all the time is our house is not dirty, it's lived in. So every time someone says, oh, I'm so sorry for the mess, I'm like, what mess? Your house is not messy, it's lived in. You have kids, you have a spouse, you have dogs. Like, this is not dirty, this is not messy. And so it kind of gives some relief whenever I think about people coming into my house. I'm like, my house is fine now, like not that worried. But I mean, we get calls for all kinds of dirty homes from, I'll just tell you about my house. Someone made a complaint on my own house because we had a spot in our carpet and they said it looked like milk had spilled and no one had cleaned it up. And so they tried to make a complaint on us as foster parents. And so our worker came in and she went, it's not crusty. Looks like you've vacuumed it. Like I was like, this carpet's 28 years old. What do you expect? It's just old carpet. And so we get random calls like that where you're like, this is ridiculous. Why am I here? And then we get calls where there's mice living under the children's bed, and that's normal. Kids who don't know the last time they took a bath. Houses that haven't had running water in months. No food in the fridge. So it's something that I have to really evaluate. Is this lifestyle? Is this culture? Or do we really have a lack of resources here and we need some help getting back on our feet? And that's usually what it is. We have different services. Like there's one called Chubbs. Chubbs does a lot. They do parenting classes in your home and they teach you how to interact with your own kids. And they also have a service that's for cleaning. They come in and they teach you how to clean your home and how to keep up with it. Yeah, they're awesome. And it's like a 6 or 8 week program. I think it depends on what it's for. But we have different specialists that do all different things. We have on-call nurses that come in and teach you how to take care of your kids' feeding tubes and different medical equipment that these kids have in the home. Yeah, so we have a lot of services that we're able to help with, and just the severity will tell us where we're at for a family.
Talk to me about severity.
So, severity being, it can really vary. We've seen all kinds of things in our job. I will tell you, every social worker has some dark humor behind them. And it's probably real dark. We all say we're going to quit our job probably 12 times a week. I walk out and I say, all right, I quit. See y'all later. And my work mom tells me every day, yeah, that's funny. I'll see you tomorrow. So we all have some dark humor, but it's due to what we see. We've sat in on forensic interviews and those can be brutal. And so when I talk about severity, it's different for every case. And like I said, it's just the difference in a dirty home versus a lived in home. You know, we talk to kids about physical and sexual abuse every day. And from a kid getting in trouble and being disciplined, because in the state of Oklahoma, you're allowed to spank your child. There's nothing illegal about that. It's over disciplining and leaving bruises. And so we have kids that they'll go and tell their school or they'll tell a friend or someone that their parent beat them and tell the school that they have marks. And sometimes we get out there and they do. They have bruises and marks, and it's definitely abuse. And sometimes we get out there and kid got in trouble for playing his video game a little too long, and he either just got yelled at or, and I shouldn't say just because emotional abuse is huge for us, but kid got yelled at or he got spanked, but it didn't leave bruises. And we talked to parents about appropriate discipline and not over disciplining or not disciplining when you're mad. That's a huge thing. I have that conversation with parents at least 3 times a day when I'm in the field, is not disciplining when you're angry. Walk away. Yeah, we know you're good. We have to walk away and come back. And I do that. I mean, I have 2-year-olds. They're into everything. And before I ever try to get on to them, I try to walk away first and remind myself they're little. Their little minds are curious. Even our 16-year-olds, their little minds are curious. They just want to know more. But that also goes into, are these kids parentified? How much do they know? Are they curious or are they testing boundaries?
Let's hear more, Brynnen.
So I see a lot of kids who are maybe the oldest of the family. They have several siblings and they parent more than the parents do. And so they know who all of their siblings' doctors are and what medications their siblings take, what homework their siblings are still missing. They know the bedtime routine. I have parents that can't tell me bedtime routine for their kids, but I can go talk to the older sister and she can tell me.
So do you think that that's because the lack of parenting, or the oldest kid or whatever child in the home is taking on that role, is like not overstepping, but just taking that lead on?
I see both. I've seen both ways. I've seen some where that child oversteps. And then sometimes it's more of us having a conversation with that child and that parent, because it's still on the parent to tell that child, you are a child. you get to be a kid for a little bit longer, still be a kid. But sometimes it is the lack of parenting. And sometimes it's the lack of knowledge for parents. When they had their second kid, they were still trying to figure it out. They didn't know how to do it. And so that oldest child started raising the next child down. And then it just continued on. And so even by their third, fourth, fifth kid, that oldest child is still the parent here. And so we really do see a lot of parentification. And a lot of the time, those kids sit in on adult conversations. They know what DHS is, they know the court system, they know all of that information. And so they also know all of the dirty and all of the dark. And that's what we really work with parents on keeping them out of. Whenever we get involved, one of the first things I tell parents is, now, if we do go to court, I want you to leave the kids out of it. Don't have them involved. Let them be kids as long as they can be, because it is so hard whenever a removal happens, especially. The kids are already confused. They've been taken out of their home. Sometimes they're not with family and they're with complete strangers. And that's already confusing and hard enough. Let's not bring them into the fighting and the attorneys and the court system in general.
Like you've organized here.
Right.
Talk to me about when you.
So there's so many different reasons that we take kids. For DHS, you'll see that we talk about neglect and abuse. When you call our hotline, it's the neglect and abuse hotline. And that's how we categorize it. Is this neglect? Basic neglect? Are we missing necessities? And a lot of the time for that, the first thing I do is walk in a home and say, okay, what needs are not being met and why are they not being met? And if it's things that parents just blatantly won't do for their children, it will result in a removal at times. But a lot of the time when people think of a removal, they think of sexual abuse and physical abuse. And that is, or drugs, drug babies. Drug babies, a lot of the time we have to remove right away because they are being weaned off of different substances and they're having withdrawals and they're needing more care than what these parents are able to give them in the state that they're at. So it makes it really hard to give you one example because there are just so many different circumstances. On my own, I've done 2 removals just since July, and they've been vastly different. And I don't do a lot of removals. With the region, we don't do hardly any removals. A lot of the cases I see are kiddos are safe in the home and we just need to get some resources in. But our county workers do the removals, and I always offer to help because it takes a village, just like it takes a village to raise a family. It takes a village to get these kids in a safe home that night. And we don't want kids sleeping in the office, and that happens. We don't have enough foster homes. We don't have enough placement for kiddos. And I mean, our last resort is wanting to call a shelter, but it's better for them to have a bed than to sleep in the office. But several times we've all had to sleep in the office. Just in the last month, I've slept in the office at least 3 times.
What are common trends you're seeing with these parents?
So one common trend is marijuana babies. With marijuana being medically legal here in Oklahoma, we really do a lot of talking to parents about, is it put up? Is it safely away from your kids? I always tell parents behind a locked door is the best place for it. Whether that's a safe out in your locked garage that your kids can't get into, whatever it may be. Little lock boxes at Walmart are about $15. And I've gone and bought one for a brand new set of parents, just had their first baby. And so I went and got them a lock box because they were doing this on their own. They had no family here. And so I went and got them a lock box because they knew nothing about it. And so it's really just making sure that these parents know how to keep their children safe. Another big trend we're seeing right now is food insecurity due to the SNAP being gone. And that's been a huge trend just this last month. And we're probably going to see more and more of that for a while because even when SNAP comes back, it's going to be limited.
Are you guys involved with the same family multiple times? Is it something, do you see that a lot? Is that a trend where I'm sure like the police department, they have where they deal with the same people. Is that the same with you guys where you deal with the family, you think it's good, it's at a content place, and then a month or a year down the road, they're back in a situation that they were once in before?
Absolutely. We have lots of families that we see multiple times, whether that's having new babies. And so we already have kids in custody. Mom has a new baby. Now we're involved again because there's another baby. Or again, a dirty house. We just can't get it clean. We just keep getting new referrals. We see a lot with divorced parents. And I will say we talk about our custody battles. And so that's what that is. A lot of the time, there's nothing we can do about it. You need to take it to court. And so we see a lot of that. But we do. We have frequent flyers. We have families that we work with over and over again. And we do everything we can not to take their children, but we are able to provide them more resources each time. But after so many resources, we have to figure out what's going to be best for kids.
Do you stay with the same family or does it just depend? How does that work?
So it depends. So with CPS, we have 60 days to close out our case. We get a case, we have anywhere from 1 to 5 days to initiate. We rate them on priority 1s and priority 2s. Priority 1s you have to see before 24 hours, before midnight of that day. Priority 2s can be priority 2 days. Maybe they have a bruise, you need to see them within 2 days so you can see that bruise, get pictures of it, all the things. The 2 5s mean we have to see them within 5 days. And that includes weekends. So we've had many that are due on a Saturday and we're doing everything we can to see them by Friday so that we don't have to work on our Saturdays. But it happens. I don't know a single social worker that hasn't worked on a Saturday at least once. But we have different ways to assign them. We all have different super.
So talk to me about how y'all get cases when they come in. Do they just go to a certain social worker or how does that get divvied up?
Yeah, so we all have different supervisors. So there's several different ways that counties do it. Sometimes it's based on seniority. Sometimes they just have a rotation and they go through the list. And if you're next on the list, it's yours. Now, priority 1s usually go first because we have to see those victims right away. And so supervisors all do that different. But for regional workers, we're in different counties every week. Our supervisors are like picking out of the county's inboxes of their caseload. And they're like, I guess you'll get that one. So the county's still going through their rotation, but all of a sudden one of their cases is just gone and it's to one of us. So each of us regional workers, we get about 5 cases a week. And so we never know where we're going to be or what we're going to get until the week of.
About how the list looks. I know when you say 5 a week, to me, I'm thinking, okay, it might be this big, but in reality, if there's so many of you in just this county, I'm imagining this list is very big. I want to know kind of what you think of that, and also, do you see a trend of when this list gets longer during like certain seasons, around the holidays, summers? Kind of
Yeah.
walk us through what you see on that.
Yeah. So right when school starts back, we see a trend of new cases coming in because it's the first time anyone's laid eyes on kids in 2 to 3 months. So we see a really big influx of that around holidays because kids are gone again. And sometimes you don't see kids once they leave. Sometimes no one sees them for long stretches. And if it's kids that someone is constantly worried about what's going on in their home life, then they're wondering, okay, are they coming back to school? Will I see them again? So we see a really big influx around those breaks for school. But to go off of the first part of your question, our list can look different in every county. We have some counties that are very quiet and they don't have a whole lot going on, mainly because they're not very populated. Smaller counties, they're a little bit slower. Usually those county workers are working several counties though. And then there's larger counties like Canadian County. Canadian County is always underwater when it comes to cases, which is why I spend a lot of my time down there. I'll text friends and be like, okay, I'm going to Canada. And so I spend a lot of time down in Canadian because they do get so many. They have such a high volume of cases coming in on the daily basis. County workers can get anywhere from 1 to 12 cases in a week, just based on how many are coming in. We're not supposed to carry more than 100% caseload, which looks different based on how many kids are in each case. And so you never know how many cases you're actually going to be carrying at once. But for regional workers, we don't carry as many as the county. So it's rare that my caseload goes over 130, 140%.
What do you mean by that, though, that percentage?
So we're not supposed to carry more than 100% caseload, but we always need more workers. We are always underwater because we have so many families that need help. So I would be surprised if there's a worker that has less than 100% caseload at the same time.
When you say 100% caseload, is that 100 cases? That like 100% caseload? Walk me through what exactly that.
Break that down for us that don't know shit.
Yeah, because I'm not gonna lie, it's not mathing. Like
Yeah.
I get it, but I need more clarification.
Yeah. So right now I have 12 cases on my caseload and I'm at 135%. And so it's based off of how many kids are on your caseload, though. So between all of my cases, sorry, that's big mouth. Between all of my cases, I have probably around 35 kids on my caseload. So again, that puts me at about 135%. But that's different for permanency workers. Permanency workers, I don't know how their caseload math works, but I know a lot of my permanency worker friends, they have about 6 to 7 cases at a time. And again, it depends on how many kids are on each case. If you have a case that only has one kiddo, it's not going to take up much of your caseload, but we have cases that have 6, 8, 10 kids on it. And so that might be one of your only cases.
This might be, I'd hate to call it a pot stirring question, but talk to me about your coworkers because we've been hearing a lot, of course, everybody does. I'm sure you hear this of there's plenty of bad, but talk to me about who you're really around.
Yeah. So I absolutely love my coworkers because I know that I can call them no matter what. I was walking into a house that we knew they were manufacturing drugs. And that's a really hard place to be in because we have to make sure there's no kids in the house, but we also have to take care of ourselves because contact high is a real thing. And if they have fentanyl in that house just by touching the doorknob, by knocking on the door, we're already at risk of anything happening. And so I was walking into a drug house and called 3 of my coworkers and I said, "All right, this is what I'm walking into. Please be on standby." And so they were literally in their cars waiting to hear if I was coming out, to hear if I had actually gone in or if I had stayed in the driveway. And to know if I needed help. And so when I told them I was done, I was out, I was headed home, they all were like, "Oh, okay, we're going back to our offices." I was like, "What do you mean you're going back to your office? Where have you been?" They were like, "We were in our cars waiting. Like we weren't about to let you just be there." I was like, "Okay, well, that's great." But we tag team a lot. Um Especially if we have a house that we have 5 or more interviews in. I mean, each interview kid interviews, we can do in about 20 minutes. Parent interviews, anywhere from 30 minutes to I've had one that lasted 2 hours because they just needed to talk.
So I'm gonna kind of ask a question on that.
Yeah.
How does parents and children react when you are involved?
Yeah, so just from the initial knock on the door to let parents know, "Hey, I'm with DHS. We have some concerns about your kiddos, and I need to talk to you about them." We get all different reactions. Some parents know we're coming. They're like, "Oh yeah, come on in, like come sit down." And then I have parents that'll say, kick rocks, get out of here. I'm not talking to you. I don't have to." And we have parents mad at us. We have parents that are in tears bawling. We have parents begging us to come in. A lot of the time, it depends on what's going on. When we have parents that have just found out that their children have been sexually abused, they're begging for us to come in and talk to them. They're begging for us to get their kid help and to tell them what to do next. Parents who we refer to as frequent flyers, sometimes they tell us to kick rocks. They don't want to talk to us. When that happens, if they're concerned about the kids, they'll send us back with a court order. And you have to allow us to see your kids. You have to talk to us because if you don't, it's going to end up being a court order to remove your children until we can get your home safe.
Is it pretty common to deal with the same family repetitively?
It can be. It can be just depending on what that family's needs are. If it's food insecurity, we deal with them quite often. These kids are hungry. Maybe the only meal they're getting is at school. So we're trying to always give them resources. It'll get to a point where we have to figure out other resources for them because obviously what we've been doing with this family hasn't been enough. But we're always trying to keep kids out of custody. That is our first priority, is to keep them from coming into custody. I'll jokingly tell parents, I don't want your kids in custody. I don't want to take your kids. It's a lot of paperwork I don't want to do. I'd rather your babies stay here with you. And so we do everything we can to keep them at home, but when it's necessary, we will have to. And a lot of the time, that is our repeat offenders that we're trying everything we can um, to not take these kids, but it's come to that point.
Is there a system set up for that? Like how many chances, how many strikes you give somebody? What if it's, I don't want to say not that bad, but if it wasn't that bad to take him the first time, but stuff keeps happening.
Three
It was-
strikes, you're out. Like, I don't.
So, yes and no. It's really just evaluating the situation. And again, we don't make any decisions on our own. So, I'm constantly talking to my supervisor, who's talking to her supervisor, who's talking to our district directors and things like that, to try to figure out what else we can do to keep these kids from having to come into custody and break up a family. Because that's most important, is we want to keep these families together as much as we can if it's appropriate.
Talk to me about the process of removals.
Okay, so yeah, that can be different depending on what it is. So sometimes if it's a drug baby, they're born right at the hospital, and it depends on how quickly we're notified of it, but they can be removed from a parent immediately and never get to go home from the hospital, and they come straight into custody. But if it's kiddos already in a home, they're school aged maybe, it can take us hours to get them removed. And so it goes through a really long strand of so many phone calls. As a worker, I'm calling my supervisor from the moment that I get the case. Before I ever talk to anyone, I'm talking to my supervisor. Hey, this is what it says. This is what the old referrals for this family are. We go and we look through their history first because we want to see what's been going on prior to this. And then we're talking to the kids first. We talk to our victims before we talk to anyone else because we want to talk to them in a space that they feel comfortable and safe. That's why a lot of the time we're trying to see kids at school, and we are able to do that because of the state law Title 10 that gives us that protection to see these kids at school. And so we talk to our victims and our siblings. And then even just after that, I'm automatically talking to my supervisor again. And I'm telling her, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm hearing. This is what I'm being told. This is what's reported to me. And she's talking to her supervisor because we're already trying to get a plan in place. Because if we have to do a safety plan or a removal of these kids, we want to be ahead of it. So it's not taking multiple days to get it done. And then from there, we're talking to parents. Once we talk to parents is when we have to make the hard decision of what's next. We try to do something called a safety plan. It makes it where the kids are with someone they know, they're with family, a friend, a neighbor, and it doesn't have to be court involved. We're able to do it without court supervision at times. There are safety plans that have the court involved, but we try to do the least restrictive that we can first. There are times that we just can't do a safety plan at all, and we have to move on to a full removal. But again, we try to place with family first. And so after that, we're talking to the DA. The DA is talking to the judge. And the judge gives us an emergency custody order to take these kids into custody. And from there, we have to have a court hearing within 2 days, which is called our show cause hearing. And so within 2 days, we're in front of a judge. And as DHS, we have to tell you our reason for removing these kids. And it better be a solid reason because that judge is ready to ream us if it's not.
Who do you see is your most frequent reporter? Is that schools? Is it doctors? Is it friends, children themselves?
So reporters are protected by law. So we don't ever tell you who the reporter is. We're not supposed to, at least. And so it's hard to say. We see it from everyone. I mean, it may be someone that only met you one time, but they saw a need and they saw something going on. That's a really hard one. I don't know that I have a solid answer for that one.
I feel like it's everyone. I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of people want to protect children, and it never hurts to put a call in because you just never know.
Yeah. And that's what I tell families all the time. If you have any concern, the worst thing that happens is that we come out and say, "Okay, you're all good. We don't have to be as concerned as we thought we did." But putting in that one call could save a kid's life.
You brought up the DHS program of Chubbs. Talk to us about some more DHS programs.
Yeah, so Chubbs is one of our main DHS based programs, but we partner with so many different organizations out there where we're able to put in referrals pretty easily from therapy offices to doctor's offices and different things like that. Women's shelters, homeless shelters, youth shelters. Some of the youth shelters in this state are absolutely wonderful. And I love getting to go and see our youth shelters and all of our volunteers out there. But Chubbs is one of the main services that comes into the home that we partner with. And like I said, they offer so many different programs just within their organization.
How are you taking care of you during all of this?
So self care is mandatory in the social work world. We are told that we cannot care for ourselves, or we cannot care for others without caring for ourselves. So one thing that I've really tried to do recently is every day when I come home, it's 20 minutes of me time, whether that's just laying on my bed, just shutting my bedroom door away from my kids, my spouse, my dogs, my house, my computer. I try to leave everything out in the entryway area so that I can really take 20 minutes, whether that's self care or just relaxing before I go back to everyday life. But honestly, my bathtub at the end of the day always calls my name.
We love a good bath.
Yes,
What are the most common trends you see with predators?
that's hard. We see such unique situations. I mean, just this week, I don't even remember what I said, but I was talking about a case to a coworker and she said, "Well, that's a first for me." And she's been doing this for over 10 years. So we really do see such unique situations for everyone that it's hard to talk about a trend. I would say one of the biggest trends right now is marijuana babies. And with medical marijuana being legal in the state of Oklahoma, it's mostly us just talking to parents about where they're locking it up and how they're storing it and keeping their kids safe.
What are common trends you're seeing with these kids?
Being coached, parents telling them exactly what to say because they've been involved with DHS for so long. And a lot of the time, it's the parents have also been involved as children. That's really common for our parents right now, is that they were also in the system or dealt with DHS frequently as a child.
To give advice to people in the equine industry about DHS, what would be that advice today?
Listen to the voice of the kids. If they tell you that something's going on, take it seriously. A lot of the time, I see kids who they have told an adult, they have told someone, but because of who their parents are or how loved their parents are in an organization, it's swept under the rug. But our first job is to listen to the voice of kids because they're innocent in all this.
It made me think of it when you brought up that the parents that you deal with sometimes have been, dealing with DHS as children themselves. Since this is a cycle, essentially, how do we stop feeding the abuser?
Stop making excuses for them. There is always going to be a reason why they did it or why it happened. And a lot of the time we hear that it's not their fault, that it's just their nature. That's how they were raised. But a big trend that we see right now on social media is breaking the cycle and not parenting the way our parents parented. And so we stop making those excuses for them. And that is the first way that we can help kids.
And is it to see the same pattern over and over?
Yeah, we see that a lot, especially when it comes to domestic violence. You've watched your parents argue and interact in that way. You've watched that arguments are physical, and sometimes that's all you know. You were hit as a child, so why wouldn't you hit your child? But again, it goes back to we're not making excuses for them anymore. We have to learn to parent in appropriate manners.
So, under the hardest thing that you wish people understood, You put that a child acting out sexually does not make them a predator. Talk to us more about that.
It goes back to sometimes that's all they know. Whether they were being forced to perform sexual acts. We've removed children because they were, let me go back. We've had some removals of kids because they were being forced to have sex with their own siblings. And so when we get them out of that house, they are acting out sexually or they have been sexually abused. And so at a young age, and so they're curious about their body early on. And so it goes anywhere from making sexual comments about their body, such as asking friends if they know what a penis looks like, asking friends if they've ever touched someone's penis, to even having sexual acts with friends at a young age. Our no, you're good.
I have a deal that'll cut out his background.
There is normal sexual behavior too for kids. Kids that are just curious about their bodies and not curious about the sexual organs. But we do see a lot of normal sexual behavior as well. There's normal sexual curiosity. Kids who are just discovering their bodies. Like toddlers. Toddlers start figuring out how to go pee in the potty. Well, now they're realizing that maybe brother has a different part than sister does. And so they're curious. They're asking questions. They may even be reaching down in their pants. But we teach them, hey, we don't do that. But we answer their questions too. Yes, you do have something different because you're a boy and she's a girl. It's even normal for teenagers to be curious about themselves sexually, to be curious about others sexually. While we don't want to encourage it or condone it, it is normal. And so we see a lot of that. But we see a lot of people who want to label kids as predators for preying on their siblings whenever that's all they knew. If it's consensual between the two kids, we don't want to label one as a predator. Now, there are child predators. We are fully aware of that. But we don't want to automatically label a kid as a predator just because of sexual acts that they think are normal.
Let's talk about, let's just say a child tells their parents, hey, I've been abused, whether that's physically, sexually, mentally, all of the things, and their parents don't believe them. What do you see shift in children? Is there a trend? Do you see them act out, behave in certain ways, anything like that?
We see it go different ways. It depends on the child. Sometimes they do act out. They begin to become defiant. We see kids shut down. They stop talking. They stop telling you things. It's different for every situation. I would say more often I see kids who become defiant and rebel against instead of shutting down to preserve their own innocence.
Do you see that defiance going long term? Do you think that the children hold that against their parents periods of time? Or do you think
I think it depends on the kid. I would say yes, I do see it mainly because of parents we work with now. They are angry at their parents because DHS was involved or because DHS wasn't involved and they needed help. I've had both. I've had parents tell me both ways. I do think that kids hold on to it long term though.
Do you have a case that haunts you?
Yes, it is still an active case, so I'm not able to speak on it, but it will probably always haunt me, mainly just because these kids deserve so much better, and these parents could have gotten their kids back very easily, but it is going to move to adoption instead, termination of parents' rights, and adoption of foster parents due to laziness of the parents to not do the services that we ask and not show the behavioral changes. Yeah, absolutely. Cases where I can walk in and say, I know you're going through a hard time, but let's get some resources and y'all will be back on track. I've actually had, I'm sure y'all know about the Stillwater Payne County petition. My name got added to the petition list. However, when my name was on the Facebook page, I had a parent that jumped on there and left a comment talking about what I did for their family and that I was able to keep their kid in their house and I was able to get them resources to get back on their feet. And so that was huge for me, at least. I had a full meltdown about that because I was like, oh my gosh, that was the sweetest thing that's ever happened.
Back to kids being curious, how should parents approach these questions?
Therapists are great to help with that. I won't speak on that because I'm not licensed in that way and I don't know enough about it. I know that there have been parents that have told me that they have open conversations with their kids, but keep it at the age level that is appropriate. But I would encourage parents to reach out to a therapist and allow a professional to help you navigate that.
I love that a common thing you've brought up is that DHS is there to help. It seems like when you hear DHS, you think of ripping families apart just because, stories, whatever. But your goal, you're on the side of the kids.
Yes.
What is the difference between your cases that you have had successful removals versus unifications?
So a lot of my cases are kids that stay in homes. I started taking cases. I officially started getting cases in June, and I've done 2 removals total. I have a coworker that I talked to last week, and she did 5 removals in 1 week. So we all see very different numbers for that, but I see a lot of kids staying in homes, and I'm doing 5 cases every other week. So in a month, I see anywhere from 10 to 15 families, and I've only had 2 removals.
So I know we talked about dirty homes.
Yeah.
We've talked about physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse. What is frequent that you see out of all of that?
Basic neglect, whether that be lack of shelter, lack of food, lack of supervision by parents, medical neglect, anything like that. We see lots of basic neglect. And so that's a huge one for us is just seeing what necessities are not being met to see what resources we can help with.
I know you're very familiar in the equine industry. What is the best thing we can look out for at horse shows, horse sales? What is something we can do better as an industry?
Again, listening to the voices of kids is huge, but seeing the demeanor of kids around their parents. You will see a fear factor in kids when they truly fear to be at home, to be with their parents. And just watching how they interact with others. Are they able to make those connections or are they trying to hide from everyone?
I really like that you kept saying, let kids be kids as long as they can be and help kids remain kids. I love that. No child deserves to have their childhood stolen.
Yeah, that's huge. We constantly are trying to remind parents that they're only kids for a little bit. So let's keep them kids as long as we can.
They're mine. But it's just really, it's interesting to hear this all fresh perspective.
Yeah.
And you're on the other side of it. Can you talk to us any about how your foster journey's been? Has it been pretty?
Yeah.
Has it been tumultuous? Tumultuous? Is that a word? Is that a word? What's the word I'm looking for?
Smooth.
Anyways, talk to us about your journey as a foster parent.
We have definitely had ups and downs. Without talking about my kids' case, of course, we've had our emotions. I would be a lie to say that we have not had complete breakdowns. But a lot of it is based on our kids. When our kids are having big emotions, then yeah, it's going to trigger big emotions for us. Court's always emotional. We really want to work with the parents. I for a while was doing phone calls with their bio mom to just check in on her, just talk to her, give her a place that she can vent if she needed it. It's really hard for bio parents to want to work with foster parents, and that's something that all foster parents have to keep in mind is while we might want to help, we're also a villain in their story because we're the people that have their kids. The goal is never to take someone's children, but the goal is to give them a safe place while parents figure out what they can do. And sometimes it ends with not being able to reunify. Again, our case is ongoing right now, so I'm not able to say a lot about it, but I can say that We have had some really great workers. We have tribal workers and DHS workers, so that's been interesting to navigate with different tribes and DHS, but we've had some really great workers that really help us with what's next and what to do to give our kids everything that they need.
Talk to us about the tribes. We touched on it earlier.
Whenever there's a tribe involved, we have to do what's called active efforts, which means that parents get more chances or more leeway than non-tribal parents. We have to do things a little bit different because of culture. So sometimes they require parents to have a driver's license and a vehicle because maybe the child has doctor's appointments in other cities. And so you're going to have to be able to transport your child to those doctor's appointments. So we require you to have a car. Sometimes when they're tribal, we don't have to require them to have a car. We're required to offer them a ride, get them what we call ride shares, or different avenues to be able to get them to and from those doctor's appointments with their kiddos.
What's a OK rideshare?
So it's another program that DHS is able to partner with where they offer free rides to parents to appointments only. So that does not count for visitations with your children. It does not count for meetings with DHS, things like that. But it is for their appointments specifically.
So is it kind of like Uber?
Yeah, so it'll be a stranger pulling up. I believe they all work for a company. I'm not 100% sure though.
I think rideshare is a company.
Well, I think they're called OK Ride, and then it's like we kind of compare it to rideshare.
Oh.
I don't know that they're owned by rideshare.
Well, I had a great time getting to hear some of the backstory of it, and I love your idea of having a little round table discussion with you and some of your
Yeah.
coworkers. Yeah, let's get a thing of pizza.
that.
Oh yeah,
Let's do it for sure. I think you guys
absolutely.
have a lot to share, and the more people that we can bring to the discussion table to figure out how to help kids, the better.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just
Y'all just let me know when.
This was enlightening. I'm gone the rest of this week, but text us for next week
Yeah.
because we're
Yes.
in.
Thank you so much for coming and just
Sure.
talking about what you guys do. I know, like you said, sometimes people may not think that DHS is your friend, but I think a lot of people are going to take this and say, hey, I didn't even know that was a thing. So thank you so much for coming here and just talking to us all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yay.
Awesome.